We mean to cancel the world you civilized people made. We will simply erase history from the time that machinery and weapons threatened more than they offered. And when you die, the last living reminder of hell will be gone.
Kind of takes the fun out of being alive, doesn't it?
I see dead people. Dead people.
There will be no order, only chaos.
Kind of takes the fun out of being alive, doesn't it?
Only chaos.
One pill makes you larger, and one pill makes you small, and the ones that mother gives you don't do anything at all. Go ask Alice when she's 2 feet small.
Happy heresies, my beloved truth seekers. This is You Got It, Coffee, Cigarettes, and Gnosis, broadcast through the virtual Alexandria through our website, thegodabovegod.com. This is approximately Saturday, February 23rd, in the year of our Lord, 2008.
What am I doing here? Why did I bother to come here today? Nobody even seems to know my name. I've been on this planet for 40 years, and I'm no closer to understanding a single thing. Why am I here? How did I get here?
In this eternal now, where all your worries and fears have become like vapor, our guest is Mark Booth, author of The Secret History of the World. More than your usual esoteric book, it is a much-needed pseudo-encyclopedia in the guise of a hulking and well-written account on all the secret societies, mystery schools, fringe religions, and occult flavors much needed on the shelves of our cavernous bookstores. From the ancient Sumerians to the wizards of the 20th century, from stargazing in Egyptian times to alchemy in the 20th century, from the Gnostics to their evolution into the Freemasons. It's all there.
The light that burns twice as bright burns half as long.
Instead of buying a book on a mystic tradition here, another on a mystic tradition there, and so forth, Mark's book gives you point by point on all of them in the hope you find the beginning of your own road to spiritual emancipation.
Look, but don't touch.
After all, it's not easy because we live in a time when all the secret organizations are no longer secret, and many have forgotten the meaning of their secrets. And half of them are spiritual lemons or New Age golden turds. Someone is making money off your thirst for a balanced aura, or someone just wants to start the newest cult of personality.
Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, is that it?
You gotta be careful, my beloved truth seekers, even with a show like this. And The Secret History of the World is a superb first step to that journey of 1,000 miles cliche. Mark's book also avows that although history is written by the winners, it is the Gnostics, the mystics, the esoteric, and occultists that truly sustain the human imagination and feed its accomplishments. Politicians, religious leaders, social philosophers, business robber barons, and military warlords keep the rusted, dilapidated surface of history together like a shantytown of tears.
If more of our so-called leaders would walk the same streets as the people who voted them in, live in the same buildings, eat the same food instead of hiding behind glass and steel and bodyguards, maybe we'd get better leadership and a little more concern for the future.
But underground there is a murky river where gentle thinkers' influence keeps the human heart youthful. And the power and principalities above have hated us for that because, let's face it, in their deep hearts they are embarrassed at the poor condition they have left the world for thousands of years. And of course Jehovah and his angelic mafia laugh in the seventh heaven, because the more misery there is, the more mankind needs to worship his hairy, omnipotent testicles.
Vanity is definitely my favorite sin.
Now some of you may be wondering why I just jumped in with today's assignment instead of my usual drivel. Just thought I'd change things around. Okay, it's quarter of a lie. I needed to get prepared for this while giving our guest a chance to show his rhinestones. A light has gone out recently in the cosmos. His name was Nathaniel Merritt, author of Jehovah Unmasked and former contributor to the Coffee, Cigarettes, and Noses articles. Nate had been fighting heart disease for 10 years, losing it to last December at the young age of 53. He is survived by his wife Pat of 32 years. Death has dominion for a while.
Ultimately, we're all dead men.
Nate was the epitome not only of the true seeker warrior, but the altruistic cavalier who only wanted to help people as the legacy of his incarnation on this planet. Like he wrote, he had been spiritually hitchhiking for many decades. He was a Jehovah Witness, a Baptist minister, studied to be a Greek Orthodox priest, was a Zen Buddhist priest, and finally a Christian Gnostic. He was very close to becoming a teacher of Christianity for high school students, secretly instructing them the lore of alternative Christianity the young people desperately need in this age of hope-killing fundamentalism.
See, it's no good, Monty. We've all got to be alike. The only way to be happy is for everyone to be made equal.
Again, all Nate ever wanted to do was help people find their higher self, their Atman, their daemon, their divine twin, their nous. He tried without ever relenting, full of sardonic humor and a merciless intellectuality. But in the end, part of him was the servant of the demiurge, just like we all are. Ashes to ashes, broken heart after broken heart. We go to funerals, hear lies from the podiums, and wonder who changed the sky after we walk out into the quiet parking lot.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
In this world we are temporal carcasses waiting for our own tainted hearts to give that last fleeting beat. But death is the beginning of all. I'm sure many of us will meet Nate again in some other wavelength of energy, dream world, or future manifestation in this or another world. Who knows? The multiverse is a large place that only a fraction is known with our mundane senses. I hope I do, because unfortunately we had separated paths months ago. In other words, we left on bad terms and neither one of us was mature enough to fix things. I never said goodbye to him. I never fixed the ego argument we had. I never told him how much his spirit had touched mine. I never did so much, a situation we all sadly fall into sooner or later.
Does man, that marvel of the universe, that glorious paradox who sent me to the stars, still make war against his brother?
I'm not saying run around telling all your friends and family how much you loved them. That should be automatic. I'm saying that you must accept that all is temporal except the eternal connection between curious souls who truly want to express their love to the universe. The Buddha said be thankful for everything, but that the everything will be taken away. The Gnostics simply said your sandcastles have melted, so you should be looking at the ocean instead.
There is no price for individuality.
For some reason, I think the words of Khalil Gibran come in handy now for Nate's adventure, which in a sense is our adventure to those who wish to somehow help ourselves or others. Death is the beginning of all. Then Almitra spoke, saying, we would ask now of death, and he said, you would know the secret of death? But how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide into the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king, whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what it is to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing, and when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb, and when the earth shall claim your limbs, then you shall truly dance. All Nate did was want to help people. He had his limited time. I hope your bestowal to the world, Jehovah Unmasked, frees as many souls as you crave, Nate. All Nate did was want to help people. Farewell, my friend. Dream the dream of the gods, laugh with the thunder of the titans, soar with the wings of angels, and come back soon. Those miles before we sleep don't mean sleep is forever.
Now we are free, and we'll see you again. But not yet. Not yet.
And in reality, the esoteric and the members of secret organization want the same thing Nate wanted, to help the spiritual downtrodden find their inner spark of the supernal reality. There really is no secret to secret organizations. It's all simple. You are Christ, you are Buddha, you are Krishna, you are a teardrop of Sophia's imagination that seeks to console itself. You are beyond God.
I'm not the Messiah!
And this entails that you are the center of the universe, just as you are a fleck of passing dust in the grand schemes of this violent universe. You are a child of light, and to light you will eventually return. You have the power to awaken other sleeping souls and show them the Promethean Gatorade within them. The question is, what path will you dare? How will you die to your lower self that goes to work, craves Apple computers that come in manila envelopes, and argues with loved ones at night? How much will you sacrifice to be branded a lunatic? And will you fight the good fight even if it costs your life?
I move for no man.
Voltaire said that a man who won't die for a cause doesn't deserve to live. Most people aren't alive anyway. We don't believe in martyrs here at the virtual Alexandria, but we are all part of the eternal champion who knows when it's time to take the field of battle. This is the Gnostic revival. This is the Gnostic Renaissance. They'll eventually come for us. Will we let them take us away one more time, or will we stand apart and rise together? I don't know. I'm just the incarnation of Abraxas, the God above God, and to him this has already come to pass.
There is no sanctuary.
On a lighter note, are you aware that the Statue of Liberty was built by Freemasons to give to American Freemasons? She is actually the goddess Isis. So when Americans, especially our favorite fundagelicals and immigrants seeking that symbol of freedom, gaze upon her magnificent visage, all they are doing is worshipping the pagan ancient mother of the greater mysteries. Isis greets the world and represents all that is good in America.
Mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of all children.
An amazing joke, don't you think? Just like the joke that the Gnostics invented Jesus, or that a group of hermetical books sparked a Renaissance, or that Kabbalists helped bring down the Ottoman Turkish Empire, or that Sophia is hidden and in control secretly in the Old Testament, and so on, my beloved truth seekers. This is not a numbers game, as I've said. There is no strength in numbers, have no such misconception. It just takes a few of us with a few good hidden jokes.
Wow, it's very nice.
Yes, Nate. History is written by the victors, but we the esoteric always get the first, the middle, and the last laugh. And somewhere in there we import hope and inspiration to the human condition. And Mark Booth will further prove it in our interview based on his book, The Secret History of the World. This is the Coffee, Cigarettes, and Gnosis interview. With us today we have Mark Booth, author of the new book, The Secret History of the World, as laid down by the secret societies. How are you doing today, Mark?
I'm very well, Miguel. Very good to talk to you.
Likewise. Enjoy the book, and it's quite an opus, so let's see how much we can cover
okay.
in some time. But tell us about, you told me that, I don't know if this was an inspiration of the book or a synchronicity, but tell us about this mad shaman that came into your office to initiate you.
Yeah, well, it's a strange story. Yes, I mean, Miguel, I chose to study philosophy and theology at university, which equips you to do nothing in life, really. Quite the reverse. I don't know if you find, but I find sometimes I think if you think about philosophy too much, you end up wanting to say nothing at all, and I was certainly heading that way.
Yeah, and I agree.
I kind of drifted into book selling and then into publishing, and but I was still interested in kind of spiritual matters and alternative history and that sort of thing, and I used to try and slip in the odd title on the list when my bosses weren't looking, and then one day this man came into my office who had an incredible aura about him, and he had a business proposition, which is that I should republish some old texts, alchemical texts and so on, to which he would write new introductions. We went out and had lunch and quickly became firm friends, and I realized, I grew to learn that he was an initiate of several secret societies, and in one case an initiate of the highest order, and he used to tell me these extraordinary things over lunch, and I'd say, well, you know, why don't you put that in a book? We'd have a huge bestseller. Well, sometimes he'd say, well, you know, if I put that in the book, the men in white coats would come and take me away. and sometimes he said, well, no, I couldn't publish that because I've sworn an oath of secrecy. We talked about these things for years and years, and then one day he said to me, well, you know, I think you're ready now. And I took him to mean initiation, and to my surprise, I said no. I think that was partly fear, because I knew by then that initiation very often involves what's sometimes called an after-death experience, an out-of-body experience that can be very dangerous. I knew that it certainly involves altered states of consciousness. I think also I was very much enjoying piecing it all together myself. This area is a great intellectual puzzle, isn't it? That's part of the joy of it. And I wasn't sure I wanted this all presented to me on a plate, I suppose. And the other thing is I knew that if I was initiated, I'd have to take an oath of secrecy myself, so I would never have the pleasure of telling anyone.
And now, Mark, you mentioned to me that you also wrote this book to get away from all the Da Vinci Code madness. What do you mean by that?
Well, the Da Vinci Code is a great book in many ways. I mean, I think in my day job I'm a publisher, and I would say in terms of narrative technique, in terms of suspense, that book when it was published was absolutely state of the art. But I've written my book partly to get away from the idea that secret societies are groups of old men, probably smelly old men, trying to manipulate people against their will. And I'm trying to say, well, I am saying instead that really they are guardians of an underground stream of spirituality that has something important to say to us today.
Yeah, because your book, which was amazing, is that you cover everything esoteric, everything mystic, everything occult from, say, the beginning of time or the beginning of man's consciousness or recognition of consciousness all the way to the medieval ages. And that's quite amazing. But what do
it's quite mad, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
It's quite mad ambition. But I suppose the thing that narrows the circle is that I'm trying to focus on what all these different traditions from the world have in common. And I've done that partly because I think that these days we're faced with a very aggressive, militant materialism and secularism that wants to mock any form of religion or spirituality. Of course, I'm thinking of people like Richard Dawkins, and of course, there are lots of very sincere, very intelligent people who have feelings of destiny, who sometimes think they may be prompted by spirits. They may feel brushed by the wing of an angel. They're interested in astrology and alchemy. They're curious about the Kabbalah and the Rosicrucians. And I've tried to write this book to show, for the first time, how all these different schools of thought hang together. And I'm saying, look, there is a consistent, cogent view of the world here that can be set against the scientific materialist one, which is, of course, the dominant one in our age.
And Mark, one thing which I found very intriguing was that you, as the book goes on, bring a list of people that you would never think were part of secret organizations or had been initiated in them. Can you give us a list of the most surprising people or people you'd never imagine were into the esoteric and occult?
Well, I mean, I think that just dividing it up into groups and springing from what I've just said, I think that in one of the chapters of the book I look into the occult roots of science, and these days science and religion tend to be enemies. It's scientists who want to, there are scientists who want to eradicate religion and spirituality from the face of the earth. But one of the things that really interested me while I was researching this book was how many of the great scientists of history have been deeply interested in this esoteric area and alternative spirituality, and I'm talking here about people like Isaac Newton and Robert Boyle and William Harvey and all the great figures of the Royal Society, which was really the great engine of the scientific revolution, and then more recent characters and discoveries too. Even the television was invented when people were trying to measure how spirits might cause fluctuations in a cathode ray tube. So one thing I'm trying to say is that really historically science and spirituality are not enemies. They're kind of intimately entwined. Another group might be politicians, and I guess many Americans would be familiar with the fact that George Washington was a Freemason. Would that be right?
Yes, pretty much. And a lot of the founding fathers is pretty much well known here.
Yes, and but I suppose that what might be slightly surprising to people, I think it's very easy to dismiss Freemasonry as a sort of dining club for businessmen. People. There may be people who go into Freemasonry because they want to do advantageous business deals. I don't know. But I think that many people go into it because they become curious about esoteric matters. They reach a time in their life when they ask themselves the great questions. Where do we come from? Where are we going? What is the meaning of life? As a result of this, disciplines like astrology are very, very important in Freemasonry. And I describe in my book the way that Washington used astrology to help lay out the city that would bear his name. There's a pattern of alignments there, which echo the sort of science of astrology of astrological architecture, if you like, which the ancient Egyptians had used, and that continued throughout history. And I tell the story in the book about how in the late 19th century 2 obelisks were plucked from in front of a temple in Alexandria in Egypt, and they were taken by boat by Freemasons on a long and perilous sea voyage. And one was taken to the side of the Thames, where it was erected and became popularly known as Cleopatra's Needle, and the other was taken to Central Park in New York. And these were erected at an astrologically propitious time, which those esoteric Freemasons believed marked the end of the Kali Yuga, or Dark Age of the Hindus, and also looked forward to a time when the Archangel St. Michael would help Freemasons play a particularly big part in world history. And that's an extraordinary thing, isn't it? That here we have so many different esoteric traditions coming together in the raising of those 2 obelisks. And I think that's a good illustration of the kind of deep mix of esoteric thought. We have Egyptian thought, Hindu thought, Jewish and Christian esoteric thought, all wrapped up together in a way which is characteristic of Freemasonry, and which great Freemasons like George Washington believed in.
And you go way back in history. Some of the greatest figures, Alexander the Great, many of the Greek philosophers, and what most people don't know, also the greatest Roman emperors were all initiated in secret organizations, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, I think that I think the Roman emperors are very interesting, because you know that in the ancient world, beside the public temples, there was always a small enclosure called the mystery school, into which the intellectual and spiritual elite was admitted, and that's where initiations took place in the ancient world. And the initiates of the time didn't think that the Caesars were worthy of initiation. The Caesars forced themselves, and that was really the beginning of the secret societies. Up until that time, esoteric teaching had very, very often been a part of the state apparatus. After the Caesars, at the time of Jesus Christ, it was driven underground and became secretive in a slightly different way.
Another one which I thought was also impressive, and again, this is for the listener to take a look at his book. But you even mentioned, certain ones you never believed, like the author of The Wizard of Oz was a theosophist. That blew me away.
Well, I think that, thinking of kind of surprising people, I suppose it's less surprising to find that figures in the ancient world were into the stuff than people in the modern world. And one of the things I'm saying in this book is that you don't have to go to the Giza Plateau to see the Egyptian pyramids. You don't have to go to the Louvre in Paris to see the Mona Lisa in order to discover esoteric codes, because they're actually hidden in the world around us, and not only in great art and architecture, but also in modern culture, and children's literature has always been full of esoteric lore. I mean, as you know, there is an esoteric tradition that a human being has a material part, a vegetable part, an animal part, and the ego. And in The Wizard of Oz, the material part is, of course, the Tin Man, the vegetable part, the Scarecrow, the animal part, the Cowardly Lion, and Dorothy is the ego or center of consciousness. And The Wizard of Oz is an allegory about esoteric development. Another example is would be Mary Poppins. P.L. Travers was a follower of the Sufi initiate Gurdjieff. In the book and the film, Mary Poppins is trying to teach children to think upside down, inside out, the other way around, in the way that the secret societies teach.
And it seems, or would you correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the being into joining the secret societies, or just simply being a practitioner of the esoteric, is to raise your consciousness, or even gain a sort of God consciousness. Is that correct?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. I think there are two stages, really. What were sometimes called the lesser mysteries and the greater mysteries. One of the things I've tried to do in my book is that I've woven these fabulous stories from esoteric traditions around the world into one narrative for the first time, and I've done that partly as a way of saying, look, this is how the supernatural works in the world. These are the patterns that it's made in world history. And then at the end of the book, I say to the reader, hey, check out your own personal experience. Can't you see the very same patterns there? And I think that this is what the lesser mysteries were about. And this is what a great deal of esoteric thought is all about, whether it's Rosicrucian or Sufi or Freemasonic or anthroposophical, theosophical, whatever. It's about trying to focus on the way that the supernatural works in the world, and it's a very difficult thing to focus on and to keep in focus, but that is the aim. And then the greater mysteries were something which grew out of that, and were perhaps rather more drastic, but is it something we touched on earlier, which is having an out of body experience. If you know that your mind can live independently of matter, then you know a lot of things. You know, for example, that you don't die when your body dies. It gives you an appreciation of something which is at the heart of all esoteric philosophy, that mind is more real than matter.
Yeah, and one thing that definitely struck me that we were talking about was initiation, because, and maybe you can explain why, or maybe there is no explanation, Mark, but I was initiated a few years ago in a secret society, and since then, I mean, right since then, my life has been, A, turned upside down, but B, I've accomplished more than I've ever accomplished. What is about being initiated in a secret organization that does that? Do we know?
Well, I think it may be. I'm being very polite here and not asking you what society that is, but I guess you'll tell me if you want to. I think that at the heart of this whole esoteric enterprise lies the evolution of human consciousness. And in the history of the world as I describe it, the whole of the cosmos is focused on trying to help us evolve our consciousness. And the initiates are people who lead the way, who are at the very vanguard, the very point of development of consciousness. We have that. There's an example. There's an example in the book, which is that at the time of the transition from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, some great Sufi teachers, and then the troubadours of southern France began to write about the experience of falling in love for the first time. Nobody had ever written about it in a way we take totally for granted before then. And I suppose the conventional historian's interpretation of that would be to say, well, you know, people have been falling in love the whole time. It was just that they never got around to writing it down. In the esoteric version of history, no one had fallen in love at first sight before great initiates seeded this development in human consciousness. And then if you apply that thought today and to think about how your consciousness might have evolved, I suspect that it may be to do with humanity having to become more aware again of spiritual promptings, of the role that disembodied intelligences play in our lives, and to become aware of these things in a more conscious, reasoned, cerebral way than people have been aware of them in the past. Because I think that is one of the unique things about human beings. When I was asking myself the question the other day, what is it that the gods and angels want from us? And I think that one of the things they want from us, because they don't have it themselves, is the ability to reason in a cerebral, free-thinking way. Humanity is absolutely unique in the cosmos in having that ability. If you look at angelic wisdom as it was given to great writers like, say, Milton or Blake, it's full of the most marvelous, beautiful, poetic imagery. It's not thoughtful. It's not cerebral, and I think that's one of the that's the point of evolution of our consciousness today. Does that tie in with your experiences at all?
Yeah, pretty much. Some of it is much darker, or I would say, the dark night of the soul, where you end up almost at the bottom of the spiritual world looking up. So I would certainly agree, or I just haven't attuned myself to listen to this other world yet, and it's a process.
Well, it is. I mean, and I think that it sounds to me as if you know you're going through a very vital stage, and you know I think that the dark night of the soul is darker than it has ever been because of the scientific revolution, because of the triumph of science. And science has been a wonderful thing for us. It's made our lives so much easier and longer and safer and more comfortable. And it will be really stupid of anyone to try to denigrate that. But as a result of enjoying all these benefits, we've learned to lock ourselves into a mechanical and materialistic kind of consciousness, which is, absolutely great for getting up in the morning and tying our shoelaces and going out to work and earning a living and kind of taking care of our family. But it's completely inappropriate in other circumstances. It's completely inappropriate when we come to consider what I called earlier the great questions of life and death, because science is full of this great feeling of certainty. So the scientists will tell us we nearly know everything there is to know, and I'm trying to say in my book really that isn't the case. It isn't true. The world is much more mysterious than that. We know we live on this little island of matter in a vast sea of mind, in a cosmic mind, and we know almost nothing about that mind. And I think it's a paradox of human nature that when it comes to the great questions of life and death, we as I say we know very little. We know very little about how the cosmos began. We're mapping huge amounts of imagination and theory onto the smallest scraps of evidence, and yet people behave as if they knew about these things, don't they? With complete murderous certainty, and that gives rise to the least of it is to sometimes to intellectual dishonesty, because they're pretending to know when they don't really. But it also gives rise people kill on these matters. These opinions on the beginnings of the cosmos. Well, they can cause wars, and I think one of the great achievements of the secret societies, and particularly of British and American Freemasonry, actually, is that it worked to create a space in which people could talk about the great questions in a relaxed and tolerant way. And the fact that you and I, Miguel, can talk about these things without wanting to cut each other's throats, I think is because of the work of the secret societies in helping to evolve our consciousness.
And Mark, you also talk a lot about the cosmic mind. How does it tie into all of this?
Well, I think that you have two choices. You can either believe with the scientific materialists that matter came first and that mind is a sort of accident of matter. I think somebody of that school described mind as a disease of matter, in which case you believe that the earth will eventually be destroyed, humanity will be destroyed, and the universe will revert to just matter. Or you believe that mind came first, and that matter was in some sense precipitated out of this great cosmic mind. that is the first view is what academic philosophers would call the materialist view, and the opposing view, which is the spiritual view, is idealism. And it's an odd thing to think that a few generations ago, certainly in the 18th century, absolutely everyone believed in idealism in some form, and they would have found materialism a very difficult philosophy to believe in. They would have found it. It would be something they could only just begin to speculate on in a very abstract way, because I think the consciousness was very different then. I think that's another way in which consciousness has evolved. Today we find it, because of this mechanical consciousness we've evolved, we actually find it quite difficult a lot of the time to believe in idealism in spirituality, and it's that development which is, as I say, I think the initiates of the secret societies are. I think that's what they're concerned to try to change.
And Mark, do you believe that that's why all cultures have such a cultures too, the exoteric and the esoteric have such an obsession with their creation myths? Like, for example, here in Christendom, there's 1,000 variations of the Garden of Eden. Is that, are we just trying to find out where we came from, or what happened?
Yes, well, I mean, I know in America you have a very special relationship with the creation myth.
Oh, God, don't tell me. Yeah, let's not.
And I don't think God wants us to be stupid. I don't think that the esoteric interpretation of Genesis is not literal in the way that some Christian fundamentalists have it. In fact, one of the interesting things I discovered while researching this book is how closely the esoteric understanding of Genesis and ancient religion parallels the scientific account. Genesis talks about matter being succeeded by vegetable life, being succeeded by animal life, and then finally, anatomically, modern humans being the, as it were, the crown of creation. There's a school of esoteric philosophy which sees the evolution of the species written across the sky in the procession of the zodiac. I'm very fond of a quote by the physicist Niels Bohr, who said that the opposite of a correct statement may be a false statement, but the opposite of a profound truth may well be another profound truth. And I think that a scientific view of creation and a spiritual view of creation will ultimately be reconciled. And I think that both are encoded in great inspired books like Genesis.
And dovetailing into science, you do write, especially at the beginning of your book, about the pineal gland. What exactly is it, and why is it so important for the human evolution?
When you, if you believe in a mind before matter account of the universe, if you believe in esoteric philosophy, then you believe that the laws of physics, as we presently understand them, haven't always held true, and in fact, many esoteric schools of thought believe that the laws of physics, as we understand them today, the Newtonian laws, only kind of snapped into place in about 11,000 BC, which is which is a really weird idea to get used to. So the world of trees and rocks and stones before that time wasn't as solid as it is today, and neither were human bodies. And human beings existed from the beginning of the cosmos, but for very long periods of time, they existed in semi-material form. And before matter had snapped into place, the real world, which humans moved in, was the world of other disembodied intelligences, of spirits and gods and angels. At that time, the organ of perception of these spirit worlds was what is sometimes called the third eye. When human beings had these sort of phantasm bodies, the physical eyes we have today were really only in embryonic form, because they only really evolved as matter itself grew harder and more perceptible, and the main organ was this third eye, which existed in between the place where our current two physical eyes exist. And in esoteric history, what happened as matter grew harder and our two eyes developed in order to perceive material world was that this third eye became vestigial, and it shriveled and gradually descended into the skull, and the skull, like all bones, grew harder, and in the state we're in now, the third eye is for the most part shut. We can't see the world of spirits and gods and angels that surrounds us, and part of the work of the secret societies has always been to work on the third eye using various techniques of meditation and so on, to find ways of reopening it and revivifying it. And it's quite the third eye, of course, plays a great part in the traditions of ancient Egypt and in Hindu traditions. And you look at Egyptian wall paintings, and they understood what the function of the pineal gland, by the way, is the seat of the third eye. It's shriveled to the extent where it's become it's a little gland about the size of an almond, set deep in the brain. And the ancients understood its function in dreams and imagination, which in esoteric thought, imagination is a much more highly thought of in idealism, because it's a way of perceiving or grasping the real world, whereas of course in scientific materialism it tends to be associated with fantasy. Interestingly, the ancients understood it, but modern science only began to get to grips with its function. I think it was in about 1866 when monographs on it were published simultaneously in Germany and Britain.
And to keep in topic of the show, what are your views on the Gnostics, Mark?
Well, I think that the Gnostic impulse is tremendously important, and the significance of Gnostics in esoteric history is the emphasis that they placed on your own personal experience, on knowing the spiritual worlds by experiencing them. When Carl Gustav Jung was interviewed on BBC Radio and asked if he believed in God, he said no, I don't believe I know. And of course, Jung was deeply immersed in esoteric philosophy and very, very learned on the subject of Gnosticism. And so I think it's right at the center of what the secret societies are trying to do.
And lastly, and I'm sure a lot of people have this question who are listening in, but somebody has an interest in the esoteric, and besides reading your book, what do you think they should do? Just simply search out, try different things, or maybe as Tobias Churton once told me, just as soon as you're interested, something will come along. Well, you'll attract something. What would you advise?
That's right. I mean, I think that excuse me, he was referring to a great tradition in the secret societies that when the time is ready, somebody will come to you, and that's certainly what happened to me. And I would just say, read everything you can. Keep an open mind. Don't try and impose patterns on things. Wait for a deeper, richer pattern to emerge.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I think that's about all the time we have today, Mark. I'd like to thank you very much for appearing on Coffee, Cigarettes, and Gnosis.
Well, Miguel, I really enjoyed it.
Well,
thank you very much.
We enjoyed it too, and good luck with your book.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day now. And there you have it, my beloved truth seekers. Mark Booth giving us a small taste of the delicious custard of the secret history of the world. Learn it, open your heart, and the secret history will find you. Search for historical truth and your thirst will never end. Search for the truth and your history will never end. Or like the Gnostic Alan Moore wrote, all history is fiction. What is not fiction is what frees you from the bonds of the matrix and into the horizons of endless possibility. Yes, my beloved truth seekers, we are the Gnostics. And I'd like to end with the wise words from our first interview with Nathaniel Merritt, who will always have a home in one of the buildings of light at the virtual Alexandria. In fact, I've put some of his old articles right at our homepage, thegodaboveGod.com, for your pleasure. But first let me exit stage left. I am Abraxas, broadcasting from the virtual Alexandria. The road is ended, the song is over. Thought I'd have something more to say. But don't cultivate any troubles, my beloved truth seekers. Because like heaven above you, the spy that loved you, I'm keeping all of your secrets safe with me tonight. Hello and goodbye as always.
What to do if you find yourself stuck with no hope of rescue? Consider how lucky you are that life has been good to you so far. Alternatively, if life hasn't been good to you so far, which, given your current circumstances, seems more likely, consider how lucky you are that it won't be troubling you much longer.
That really stuck in my mind, that these two are the same being, Satan and Jehovah. In fact, we studied the fact that the Bible is actually polytheistic and henotheistic, not monotheistic. Really, it's Elohim is plural, it's gods. So all of that, the fact that the Bible speaks of many gods, that you have Satan, who is actually these Jehovah gods, that's a kind of an umbrella term for them. It was very Gnostic, and the big thing I was trying to do was find a way to bridge between my insights,
my experience of an absolute reality that was pure love, infinitely good, no duality in it at all. You know, when you've been meditating for a while, you start having these insights into the non-duality of things, that, you know, black, white, good, evil, they all depend on one another. But when I had this final experience of breaking through to the good that Plato talked about, there is no duality in there. There's no self. It's absolute love and goodness. How would I explain that to someone in the face of the suffering that we experience here in the world? This is a world of duality and suffering and darkness. People might want to try to deny all that, but this is a world where you're born, and the moment you're born, you begin a journey to death.
That's true.
You're going to die. I'm going to die. You're going to die. Everyone's going to. No amount of believing in any holy book ever kept anybody alive. People have their children kidnapped, raped, and murdered. What do you say to somebody like that? His little girl was just killed. Do I tell them that her suffering wasn't real because she wasn't real? That all that was going on there was God playing hide and go seek with God, and this little girl's being strangled and raped and murdered? That suffering there is, but none who suffer. Mm-hmm. That's a Zen term. Do I tell them, as New Agers try to tell us, that the suffering isn't real? It's easy to say those kind of things when you're healthy and young and strong and you're well off and nothing bad is happening. But those people, when something really awful happens to them and you repeat some of their nonsense back to them, they're going to get very angry because they've been suddenly confronted by reality. Whereas right now they're living in unreality. These New Age types, it's just about this sort of nonsense.
So needless to say, you're not a fan of New Age. What is your take on that?
No, not at all. Very superficial. I don't like their glib answers. I don't like how they don't take suffering seriously. Mm-hmm. And they're stuck in duality. They want to tell me all about how all is, everything's the interplay of opposites, but they haven't broke through yet to the final reality, which is infinite love and goodness without any shadow of darkness at all. Just as the Buddha did. If you read in the Tripitaka, the Three Baskets, the earliest Buddhist writings, he spoke of Nibbana. He did not say it was samsara. He spoke of it as the unborn, the ungrown, the unconditioned, the uncompounded, the absolute. A lot of other very positive adjectives to describe it. That's what it is. It's the good that Plato described. Pure love. So you have this dichotomy, this source, this pure love, pure goodness, and then you have here in this world of duality, of evil and good, pain and pleasure. How do we account for that? The Gnostic mythology I embraced, because I don't think you really can explain that dichotomy in rational terms, in scientific terms. You need a mythos to do that, and the Gnostic myths do that very well for me, and for other people that I've reached out to.
So you would say that this description of Gnosticism, that it's a duality religion, is pretty much untrue.
A lot of people would disagree with me. Gnosticism, everyone who has a mystical spiritual path these days calls themselves a Gnostic.
Very true.
It's become the hip thing to call yourself. They're really, they don't have a clue as to historically what Gnosticism is. We take evil very seriously. We would not say that this world is God. But yet, New Agers want to tell me this world is God? What? God is a pool of vomit? God is a soldier's exploded brains out in Iraq? A pile of dog manure? An exploding star? Whatever this world is, it isn't God. It's certainly an interplay of opposites. A lot of these New Age books out now are talk about all the strange properties of matter on a quantum level, and they draw the conclusion from it, well, this universe must be God. Look how weird the universe is on a quantum level. It must be God. Well, no, that's a pretty huge leap of logic. There's nothing connecting the two.
Yes, and it just shows you how flawed the universe is.
To find a way to bridge the reality that we live in, which is suffering, just as the Buddha said, and this ultimate reality that I experience every day, I embraced the Gnostic ethos to do that. That's the only way it can be explained. We have to have the experience to which the myth points. If you're initiated into the mystery, you'll have the experience and the light will click on inside.
I knew Leo G. Carroll was over a barrel when Tarantula took to the hills. And I really got hot when I saw Jeanette Scott fight a triplet that spits poison and kills. Dana Andrews said prunes gave him the rooms, and passing the muse lots of skills. But when worlds collide, said George Powell to his bride, I'm gonna give you some terror.
Nathaniel, in your books, you're very unapologetic about your simulating Jehovah and Satan. Could you give us your views on the concept of evil, which C.G. Jung said only the Gnostics really got right?
Well, I'd love to, and he certainly is right there. Mm-hmm. But here in America, it's become normal for Americans to think of evil as simply the absence of good.
Right.
And this is due to the influences of New Age thinking and belief, as far as I can determine. And New Age thinking is itself based on Far Eastern religions such as Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism. Such people don't see evil as an active spiritual principle of malevolence. Instead, they see it as the mere flip side of the coin of good. Neither good nor evil in their view is self-existent, but each only exists in relation to the other. Mm-hmm. And then only in our minds. Ultimately, to these folks, neither good or evil are real, but are only value judgments that we make upon morally neutral natural occurrences, and we place our subjective moral value judgments on them. For example, a tornado will tear through a community and cause terrible destruction, and we call it bad, when in reality it's merely a neutral weather pattern, and it's actually neither good or evil. We merely label it that way because we don't like what it does. New Agers are correct when it comes to such natural events. These aren't either good or evil. But when I'm speaking of evil, I speak of the inexplicable, palpable evil of human beings and other sentient beings of this cosmos. Take, for example, the horrible acts such as the kidnapping, beating, torturing, sodomizing, raping, strangling, stabbing, and dismembering of a beautiful little girl. This happens way too often in real life. In the eyes of these New Agers I'm talking about, such a hideous crime is actually not evil at all. It's just a natural event, like a tornado, since humans are as natural as tornadoes are. We're a product of the natural world, just like a tornado is, and it's the natural inclination of some humans to commit such acts, just as it's the natural inclination of tornadoes to kill people. Well, I have to disagree with this reasoning. A tornado is simply a weather pattern. It doesn't have a mind or sentience or emotions or a conscience. It's not a person doing things out of malevolent, hateful intent. But that's not so with the murderous kidnapper. Although, yeah, they're just as natural to this world anyway as the tornado. The murderer is a sentient being with a will and a set of emotions and a conscience. The murderer has a choice whether or not they're going to act on their impulses and drives, just as the rest of us do. All of us might have all sorts of impulses, but we manage to overcome them. We manage to not give in to them. The murderer's chosen to give in to them. And in so doing, has given in to true evil with a capital E. That sort of evil is a principle of malevolence that is at work in this cosmos. It's not a mere absence of good. Evil of this sort is not merely a morally neutral absence of good. Let me repeat that. It's an active principle of malevolence. It's self-existent. It doesn't depend on good for its existence. It's not the flip side of good. To prove this, it's easy to picture a universe utterly devoid of good of any kind, even beauty, but in which this malevolent evil, such as we've been discussing, still exists. That's because evil is self-existent, and that fact is self-evident. Now, would you say to the parents of a horribly murdered and dismembered little girl, "Buck up! Her death was just the absence of good," or "Buck up! Her death was simply God playing hide and seek with God," or even "Buck up! It's all an illusion, And your daughter didn't really exist anyway. Suffering there is, but none who suffer. If you said any of those things to the parents, you'd be assaulted. You'd be assaulted. And I'd probably boot your fanny too a few times for good measure.
Oh, yeah.
Such monstrous lies are straight from the evil one. How callous, jaded, and self-centered, and apathetic and blind people have to be to actually say such things, let alone believe such things. I'm sure there were Jewish people back in World War II who thought in a New Age way about evil until they were taken to a Nazi death camp and were confronted there with the inexplicability of evil, because it is indeed inexplicable. It can't be explained away by any New Age or Far Eastern word games or conceptual shell games. When people spouting that kind of nonsense become victims themselves of true evil, you can bet they don't believe that they themselves are an illusion, or that the evil that came upon them is simply the absence of good. When these people are faced with the inexplicability of evil and the pointless murder of one of their loved ones, they lose that artificial patina of shallow, deluded New Age thinking, and instead they become real humans again. Real humans who see things as they really are, not as some abstract religious theory made out of fancy words and ethereal concepts fooled them into. The truth is that evil is a self-existent, spiritual principle of malevolence. It's entirely independent of the good. If New Agers and other adherents of Far Eastern thought were to meditate long enough, they'd eventually break through to a realization of the good, of infinite love, in which there is no evil, or darkness, or even shades of gray. The Buddha spoke of this ultimate reality as the unborn, the ungrown, the unconditioned, the uncompounded, the absolute. I know it, and you know it as God, as infinite love, that has no need of evil to make it real. Good isn't a flip side of any coin, evil or otherwise. Evil doesn't come forth from the good. Evil doesn't come forth from infinite love, and it's infinite love that's the ultimate truth. Love is God, God is love, and we have to break through this world of duality and realize the good, realize the love that Plato spoke about. We have to break through this world of duality and realize the good, the love. We have to come to realize and know God, the pleroma, which has nothing to do with the existence of samsara. The good didn't create or emanate samsara. There is no causal relationship between the pleroma and this cosmos of suffering and death. Both are self-existent, just as the Buddha indicated in the Tripitaka, and just as the words of Jesus indicated. Nibbana is not samsara.
And what would you say is the why does the principle of evil exist? To keep us ignorant, or I guess in the Buddhist way, to keep us in so much suffering we never have a chance to get out?
You hit on that in a moment. I've read some really subhuman and inhuman statements in New Age and Far Eastern materials.
Really?
In fact, one book by a very well-known female New Ager even says children who are victims of such horrible crimes were themselves the victimizers in a previous life. Therefore, we shouldn't let these things bother us or upset us.
Oh, God.
Because nothing should disturb the cocoon of transcendental apathy in which New Age thought wraps its victims. Truly, these people have lost a huge piece of their humanity. And nothing but personal tragedy will ever wake them out of the torpor, maybe not even that. Maybe they're unreachable. And you have to wonder about people who deeply and earnestly desire to see us relativize evil. What's their motive? It certainly isn't good.
Right.
As to the ultimate source of evil, the Buddha indicated that it's simply self-existent. Samsara simply is. It has no beginning or end. Neither does Nibbana. God has no beginning. This material world has no beginning. Science, physics, astrophysics bears this out. This material universe simply is. It always was and will be. It's in the process of dying. And it may again be reborn, but there is no beginning to it. These are two self-existent realities. Now, I'm not denying the ugly reality of reincarnation. But I am denying the idea that everything that occurs in this world is the fruit of karma, in a different life. Little children who are horribly murdered are victims of inexplicable evil, just as 6 million gas Jews were. So, folks, if you're listening, don't be a New Age dupe. Wake up, take back your humanity. Join the fray. Help bring the good into this world. Don't be apathetic. Have an apathetic mindset that lets you off the hook and enables you to not care or get involved. You mentioned Carl Jung, right?
Yes.
At the beginning of this. Well, historically speaking, he's right. Gnostics have never relativized evil or placed it in a causal relationship with the pleroma, the Godhead. This is one of the distinguishing marks of genuine gnosis as opposed to the counterfeit. This is one of the major ways to spot those who are merely dressed up as Gnostics and are pawning themselves off as Gnostics. The Internet's overflowing with these pseudo-Gnostics, whether out of ignorance or design. So listeners, remain vigilant because evil is indeed lurking out there. It's trying to trip you up so that you'll fall into its snare and unwittingly become its agent and its mouthpiece. What you want is to break through into knowing the good, into knowing the pleroma, the God of infinite love. That's what we're about. And bringing that light into this world. Now, there's going to be people who disagree. And I challenge any such person, if you're an author or lecturer on spiritual matters, to a genuine structured debate, not an unstructured argument, on this issue, on this program or any other program. And that's all I have to say on the subject.
Well, that's very well said, and let's see if that happens. Also, do you agree with me that a lot of people, especially Theosophists and some New Agers, have this really positive view of reincarnation when it should be the opposite? Reincarnation is not something to look forward to?
That's correct. Most people who've ever lived and most people who are alive right now, out of the billions, they're living lives of terrible suffering. Poverty, grinding poverty, injustice. Oh my, I can't even begin to take in the magnitude of the suffering and evil. They've been lucky this go-round. They've been born in America or Europe, and they're relatively well off. What makes them think the next toss of the coin, they're not going to wind up an untouchable in Calcutta, or even worse? There is nothing good to be said about reincarnation. Not in a realistic way, anyway.
Oh, well, glad you said that. Glad you said that, because that's another issue that I have personally.
Yes, we both want out of here.
Yes.
We want to rejoin God.
A one-way ticket to the pleroma.